Are you working on mixing your own feed? You're wondering exactly how do you go about that to figure out how much protein is going to be in the final product and those kinds of things? That's what we're going to hopefully get cleared up in today's video. Hey guys, welcome back to another Slightly Rednecked video. Again, my name's Chris, and if you're not familiar with this channel, I help you to produce your own meat, eggs, and vegetables from your backyard, your balcony, your deck, your garage, or even a spare room in your house if that's the way you want to do it. And I'm doing a follow-up to a video I shot a couple of days ago. I did a live video early morning, getting ready for work. I was in a rush, and I didn't really do a very good job, I think, of explaining it. But if you're having a hard time finding, I should say, a high protein quail feed, then we're going to talk today a little bit more in detail about how you can get the protein levels up. Now, what I said in the video the other day was, you can mix up some cat food, some dry cat food, crush that up. It should be a higher protein. You can mix that in with your quail food, but we're going to talk about exactly how you figure out how much you need to put in there. And another good suggestion, instead of cat food, use catfish food. So floating catfish food, they come in little pellets. That's a really good option. Usually those are somewhere around 30%, something like that, protein. And mixing that in with your food, you might want to crush it up first, run it through a coffee grinder or a blender or something like that to kind of crumble it up to where it's about the same size as, the regular game bird feed, and then mix that in. But how much do you mix in? That's kind of what we're going to focus on right now. So I can't do the math in my head, but we've got a little whiteboard that'll hopefully help us out here. It's actually pretty easy to figure out how much you're going to add in. Let me start off by saying that let me start off by saying that the protein percent is based on the weight of the feed. So, you have a quail feed, let's say that's 20% protein. So I'm going to write that down, 20%. There we go, I can't write. Hopefully you guys will be able to see this, 20% protein. Did I write that very well? My handwriting's terrible, sorry. But 20% protein for your quail feed. That means in 1 pound of quail food, it's roughly 20% protein. If you want to get that protein level up, and let's say you have a 30% catfish food or cat food or whatever. Get my camera to focus here a little bit. There we go. A 30% catfish food or cat food or whatever it is that you're going to be using. So to figure out how much you want to mix in depends on what your final percentage is going to be. So let's just say we start with 1 pound of each one. And all you're going to do is average these together. So 1 times 20 is 20. 1 times 30 is 30. Add those two together. That brings you up to 50%. And then divide by 2. Hopefully this makes sense. So you're at 25% protein. 25% protein if you mixed it half and half by weight. Now you might want to get a kitchen scale, something like that, so you can weigh the stuff out and you know exactly how much you're getting. If you do that with some, you get some bowls or some cups or something like that, you'll figure out, well, how much does this bowl hold and how much does that bowl hold? You can figure it out so you don't have to weigh it every single time. You'll know exactly how much you need to add. But mixing it half and half by weight would give you roughly 25% protein. Now, if you want to bump that up a little bit, let me erase this. We'll do the math again with another level. Let's try this again. Let's say, again, we're starting off with a 20% quail food. Let me write that down, 20%. We'll start off with 1 pound of that, so that equals 20. And then we've got 30% game bird or 30% catfish food, cat food, whatever. And we're going to go with 1.5 pounds of that. So 30 times 1.5 equals, what is that? 45, right? 45. Add those two together, we're at 65. Add these two together, we're at 2.5. So let's see, 65 divided by 2.5. I can't do that math in my head right here on camera. I might be able to get close, but let's just pull out a calculator just to make sure I get it right. All right, so 65 divided by 2.5 equals 26%. So we're at 26% protein. So hopefully this makes sense, what we're doing here. Oh, I just dropped the lid to my pen. Oh well, I'll pick it up later. So let's bump that up a little bit. Let's say that we go to 2 pounds of catfish food. At 30% protein, that's going to be 60. Add those together, that's 80. That's 3 pounds total. Divide that out. 80 divided by 3 is going to be, I don't know, let's pull out the calculator again, make sure I get it right, because it would be embarrassing to get it wrong. What do we got? 80 divided by 3 equals 26.7. Round it up, 26.666666666. So we're roughly at 26.7% protein. Now, 26% protein is plenty high enough for your birds. I like to go somewhere over 25% protein. So don't go crazy with this. You don't need to really force it to try to get it up that much higher. If you're starting off with 20% protein feed and you're adding in a 30% protein feed, it's going to take a whole lot of 30% protein feed to get it up much higher than 25%. So 25% is just fine. That's where I would stay. Now, the other thing you want to look at is a couple of things. The calcium. Make sure that the calcium level stays at about 1.5%, and you figure it out the same way. So let's say, let me erase this. We'll do the math on that just to make sure you're clear. All right, let's say that we start off with the quail feed, the game bird feed, whatever it is you're starting with, is, let's say it's 2% calcium. You've got 1 pound of that, so that equals 2. Let's say your catfish feed is 1% calcium. So that equals 1. You add those together, 3. Oh, wait, we went with, let's say 1.5 pounds. So we're at 1.5. So we're at 3.5 divided by 2.5. Hopefully my math makes sense. 2 pounds, or excuse me, 1 pound of 2% calcium quail food is 2. 1.5 pounds of 1% catfish food is 1.5. Add those together. 2 plus 1.5 is 3.5. 1 plus 1.5 is 2.5. So we're going to do the math. 3.5 divided by 2.5. Pull out my calculator again, make sure I get it right. 3.5 divided by 2.5 equals 1.4% calcium. That's a little bit on the low side. So what you would do in that situation, you don't want to add calcium directly to the feed. You want to add it in a separate container and let the quail have free choice of it. They'll eat as much as they need to. So don't just go dumping a bunch of calcium into your feed trying to get the calcium levels up in your feed. You may go overboard, and if you get too much calcium, and then there's problems that can arise from that. So you don't have to worry about trying to regulate that exactly. You just know my calcium levels are a little bit low, so you'll need to get some crushed oyster shell or limestone, something like that that adds calcium, and crush that up, or hopefully you get it's already crushed up. Put it in a separate container on the side. The birds will eat as much of that as they need. They'll self-regulate that, so you don't have to worry about that too much. The other things you want to look at, vitamin E, selenium, and thiamine. Those are probably the 3 most important. And vitamin B, I guess, would be another one in there. And the way I would suggest doing that, because I can't remember right off the top of my head exactly what the minimum requirements for all those things are. So look at your game bird starter, look at what percentage it is, and try to maintain that percentage. If you're going to fall below that percentage too much on those 4 vitamins, then you need to look at probably adding a soluble vitamin to their water supply. And that will give them the boost in those vitamins that they need, because you don't want that to drop down too much. And you can pick that up in any farm supply store. Just go in and tell them you need a vitamin supplement for poultry, and they'll give it to you. And there'll be instructions on there that tell you how much to add to your water and all those kinds of things. So anyway, hopefully that clears a lot of things up for you. And I'm sorry that if you were on the live broadcast that I shot the other day, I didn't have all that stuff ready. I should have prepared a little bit better for it, but I was just kind of running behind. I was in a hurry to get something out for you guys, give you some ideas on that, and I thought it's a good idea to come back and let's do a little bit more in-depth discussion on that. So, another couple of questions that came up on that, the comments section on that video were, what about the shellless eggs? What about the eggs with really thin shells and some of those kinds of things? Again, don't worry about those too much. That's going to be very, very common, especially when the birds first start laying. So, when your birds first start laying, which these guys are pretty young, they've just started laying. Actually, what happens generally, and it's exactly what all my birds did, is they started laying a couple of weeks ago, and they laid not a lot of eggs, but some eggs, and then they kind of stopped for a week or 2. And then they started back up, and it was just full on. Everybody's laying eggs. I'm getting tons of eggs out of them, but I am getting a couple of, with no shell on them, or with really thin shells that are cracked or whatever. But that's really common when they first start laying. Don't stress about that. That's not necessarily a sign that their calcium level's too low. You really don't need to do anything about that unless it's like an ongoing, consistent issue with birds that have been laying for a very long time. Then it may be a sign that you've got some calcium problems. But if it's just an egg here and there, don't worry about it. It's normal. And we're getting a little serenade from the roosters here in the background today. They're singing to us. Hopefully you guys like that. Anyway, hopefully I got that cleared up for you guys. That makes a little bit more sense. Leave me a comment below. Let me know, did that clear things up? Do you still have some questions? Do you need some more information on it? Thank you so much for watching. As always, God bless.